welcome back to Wellness Discussions with me and Jacqui. This is our second episode, and today's topic is why we left the hustle. So pretty much what we're going to discuss today is both Jacqui and I had a high orientation towards external achievement in our academic careers. And then when we moved from academia to having formal employment and formal jobs, that continued and then I think actually escalated. And for a few years, we worked in formal employment, being very much external achievement orientation. In my case, there was some very typical workaholic things. We'll hear from Jacqui what happened in her scenario. And then it got to a point where both of us felt that that was no longer serving us, and we left formal employment. And as it stands today, both of us are self-employed. We've had major shifts in terms of our mindset approach to the way that we work, to the way that we live, to the way that we approach income, what success means to us, what achievement means to us. And we're pretty much going to discuss all of that today, and we're very excited to be discussing that. And that's about it. So I'm going to hand over to Jacqui now. If Jacqui, you don't want to just jump into giving us a bit about your background and how it came to where we are now, maybe.
Yeah, so I'd say I come from a background of placing a lot of pressure on myself to achieve, and that definition of achievement was really driven by external definitions of success. I remember even as a little girl in primary school feeling like absolutely distraught if I got anything less than an A on a test. And that kind of mentality sort of carried me through schooling, carried me through university. And when it came to choosing what I wanted to study at university, my decision-making process was very much driven by, what is a good career that's going to get me a good job, that's going to make me a lot of money. I don't think I ever really considered things like what kind of lifestyle do I want as an adult, or what are my true interests and true passions. Even though I've had a natural interest in nutrition my whole life. And so I chose to study actuarial science, mostly because so many people say an actuary is a really good career and you can make a lot of money. So I was like, okay, cool. And I didn't really understand even what an actuary did. But yeah, I studied my butt off at university, and in my first job after university, I started working for a big international consulting firm, and it was in a high-rise building in the city, and I went there fully kitted out in my pencil skirt and my high heels, and I thought, wow, I've made it, I've made it.
And nice job.
Yeah. And that first job lasted 6 months because I hit a complete burnout. I just remember I had zero emotional resiliency left. Like, I would try and escape during the day and go sit in my car in the parking lot and just cry because I couldn't handle the pressure. And it was actually one day in a meeting like with my manager in a glass office, that I just burst out in tears. And I was just like, I can't do this. I can't handle this. And so I'd say for most of my 20s, I lived with this constant tug of war with myself. So one side of me was saying, like, surely there's something more. Like, I can't be destined to a life of 40 hours a week in an office staring at a computer screen. And the other side of me was saying, that's life. Like, you just got to suck it up. You got to put your big old pants on and you make it work. So I had that constant tug of war with myself, and during my 20s, I ended up working for 4 different companies. And every time I started a new job, I really thought, okay, this is the one, I'm going to make it work. I gave it my all. And I would inevitably just end up having that burnout again. And in between those jobs, I even ended up doing my master's degree. And I think the motivation for me to do my master's was also very much driven by a need to prove myself. Like, I'm not a failure. I can still get a master's degree. But the nice thing about the master's was when I chose my subjects, I realized that there was this branch of statistics called biostatistics, and that really intrigued me because of my natural interest in health and nutrition. And so I went that route, which at least was a small step I was taking towards actually listening
Yeah.
to myself and like
Yeah.
my interests. But
Mm,
even after my master's, I was like, well, I need to earn money, and I still had this like tunnel vision of what success looked like. It was corporate success, you know. And so in my last job, I was working in the health and life insurance industry. And I thought, you know what, let me just start studying nutrition on the side, because I was already spending all my free time reading like nutrition books and researching nutrition. So I thought, let me do my diploma in nutritional therapy part-time. And I started taking on some nutrition clients on the side. And it slowly started getting more demand for it. And I thought, oh wow, maybe I could actually make this work. And I think the fear of failure put me off for a long time of actually making that
mm,
move. I really had a fear of, you know, what if it doesn't work? What are people going to think of me?
mm,
But at some point, I think the shift was that the fear of regret started to outweigh the fear of failure.
mm.
Because I thought, if you fail, what's the worst that can happen? You try again.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
regret, like that, you can't go back in time. So
Yeah.
yeah, I think that's finally what drove me.
Wow. There's so much in your story that I can relate to, so many similarities with academia. I think I found that sort of real focus on like achieving, because for the profession that I chose, you kind of had to do the next level. Like you had to get certain qualifications, otherwise you couldn't practice. And they made sure that the academic system kept reminding us that like this is the goal. So you have to make it through all these. So in my third year, just like study really hard to get in for the next degree, get in for the next degree. You have to be cream of the crop. You have to be 12% to get in, like the top 12% to get in for master's degree. So again, took on extra subjects because got to prove yourself, got to make sure that you stand out on your CV, got to make sure that you're able to get the job that you want. And, I did well. Then I got in for my master's degree and I started working as a consultant. And again, I had this pressure that this is what society has told me success is. This is what society has told me I'm supposed to do. I'm supposed to work really hard. I'm supposed to have a really good CV, a really good academic track record. So when I went into the job, I went in while doing my master's degree, and high heels, a lot of makeup. Like I was told to power dress. I literally remember lots of people telling me, like people in academia, people in the working world, remember to power dress, remember to like, the whole outfit and the makeup and sleep when you're dead and all of those like buzzwords that people say. And at the time I was working, I think 10 hours a day. So I would get to the office like somewhere between 6 and 7 in the morning. And then I would still get home when it's dark and either work on my studies or work on studying to be better at my job, to make sure that I don't fail, that I'm exceeding expectations, that the feedback is great, and the constant focus on just achieving and I guess proving my worth to, I'm not really sure who, I guess probably myself, but that's what I was told we were supposed to do, and that's what I did. And I got very little sleep, and slowly my health declined. I had random ailments that I would get, and it wasn't major things, but it was more and more migraines. It was like little issues that kept popping up. And then you medicate through that because sickness is weakness. I got to show up. I have clients that I need to see. I was in consulting then as well. And there were no sick days. I didn't take any sick days. So I needed to medicate to make sure that I can operate at the same level every single day and do what was expected of me. And I remember thinking like all of it's worth it. And because that's what you're supposed to do, right? This is what success is. This is a good life. This is what people have told me is a good life. And the thoughts kept creeping in like, when is this good life? Because like I'm tired and I'm stressed. And
Exactly.
I have all these random like aches and pains like from wearing high heels in like construction sites and doing all this stuff, and I'm barely eating. I'm living off of like petrol station food. And I really think it started to creep in. Like people say, like, you do this for the good life. And I'm like, who's living the good life? The people around me weren't living the good life. The managers in the company I was working for, in my opinion, weren't living the good life. So I think I started to question, like, is this it? Do we just continue to do this day in and day out for years and years? And I ended on, like, even though I had those thoughts, I ended up taking on more. And I started working in addition, not that I had any free time to work with, but in addition to doing my master's degree still and working like 10 hours a day, I started working for the university as well. And I think that was the final straw of just like, this is not sustainable. And again, same as you then, I reached that point of like burnout. It was like, I cannot do this every day, day in and day out. Like my body is exhausted. My mind is exhausted. I had a meeting with my company as like, this is not sustainable. I took 2 months off of work to focus on my thesis. But in that time, like I realized that my body and my mind had deteriorated from exhaustion, like so much that my level of productivity was so low. And I kept thinking, like, did I work this hard to not be able to function at the level that I know I kind of can function at? And the more I took, that time off, the more it seeped in, like, there's gotta be more. There's gotta be more to this. Like, this can't be it. This can't be the thing that we work so hard for and sacrifice so much for. And I think those were the thoughts that crept in. And again, like you, I had the fears of like, for so long, I've been told my worth is attached to my academic achievement and my career achievement. That was my worth to society, was what I could produce and what I could give back. And, the financial fears, because you're an adult now, you have to pay for all of the things. But I think we have push and pull factors with motivation. And I think eventually the push factors were so severe that I was like, I'm done. I'm not doing this anymore. I didn't have a plan at the time when I quit my job, but I just knew that this is not sustainable. I can't do this. I can't be working in this environment where I'm trying to be healthier. I'm trying to change things in a sustainable way, but the working environment is condoning not sleeping enough. It's telling me that taking sick days is like weakness, or they don't have capacity for me to take that time off or anything. So that is not really conducive to what I was trying to achieve. And eventually that tussle just became too much, to the point that I quit.
Yeah, and I think there are so many women in this position, and I guess that's why we're doing this video, is to hopefully just create a sense of community amongst others in this position, because a lot of the clients that I work with, their health, like you said, their health is struggling because they're trying to keep up with these demands. And yeah, my hopes with us talking more about it is that we can show that there is another way. There's a way to be successful, and we can talk about what that definition of success is, but there's a way to be successful and honor your health and live in tune with your body and your interests, and not have to sacrifice your health for success.
And wake up and be excited about what you do on a daily basis. Like, wake up not irritated or stressed or dreading the day. Like, because I was every single day, I was like, oh, okay, let's just get through today. Let's power through this.
Yeah, I remember, there were times I woke up almost in tears, because I was like, I don't want to get out of bed. I don't want to face the day. And I would get in my car and drive. I remember one of my jobs was like about an hour to get there sitting in traffic. And I was just, by the time I got to the office, after being in traffic for an hour, I was already like emotionally on edge. And then the thought of having to go into the office was so stressful for me that I would sit in my car and just have to calm myself. I would like put a meditation app on and just like think, okay, I can do this. I can get through the day. And it's just crazy to think that I lived like that for many years, trying to just get through. And like you said, that's the rest of your life. Are you supposed to live like that for the rest of your life, just getting through?
Just coping, yeah. And it was great, because I remember remember how much praise I got for doing that. I remember when I was operating on like, I think at that point I was down to like maybe 4 or 5 hours of sleep every single night. And then I would get up early to go to the gym and be praised for that too, because now that's healthy. Now I'm sacrificing even more sleep on a body that's struggling, not coping, but got to get to gym at like 6 a.m.
Same.
And yeah. And I remember I was asked to be like a guest speaker at various things and then people would say to me, because you're a role model and other people want to like achieve what you're doing and do what you're doing. And at the time I was like, great. That means that I'm doing the things I'm supposed to be doing. This is what people a lot older, a lot wiser people I'm looking up to are telling me. But like in hindsight, I'm like, I shouldn't have been a role model. Like I was telling other people that this is what you do. This is success. You sacrifice your sleep, your health, your social life, your well-being in the pursuit of, I don't know, a title, various job achievements and other things. So yeah, that kind of, I think, really paints a picture of where we come from. I know we make it look really bleak. I don't think we're mean to imply that everything about it was terrible. And that's not it. This discussion is just not going to go into like the amazing parts of it. So we can all just assume there were also great parts of what we did. And I think you and I are both passionate about what we do. It's not that we're not. It's not that we chose careers that we don't love or that we hated everything about being formally employed. I think the big message is that it wasn't sustainable the way that we were doing it. And I started to resent the work I do because I was tired, because I was stressed, because I had aches and pains, because I was unhappy and not feeling fulfilled. But I mean, I still do that same work that I did back then now. And I love every moment of what I do because now I do it in a way that honors that life is more than just doing that day in and day out in a particular way as well. So we've changed the way that we work. And I think that's also something we can discuss.
Yeah.
But maybe unless you had something else to add, I was thinking maybe we can go back to the moment, like the moment of like clarity that it's time to leave the hustle.
Well, yeah, I have this distinct memory of this aha moment that I have, and I'll never forget that day because it was in my first job and I was having lunch with my colleagues and they were talking about this project that we were working on and I was like, oh, like it's lunch, guys, I just want to take a break from talking about this. But then I watched them talking about this project and with like such excitement, like they were discussing this project like it was the coolest thing for them. They were like, oh, and then we're going to try this and then we're going to see if this works out. And I realized they like this job. And I'm like, they really genuinely find this work interesting. They passionate about what they do. And then that made me realize like I want that. I want what they have. And I don't have to feel guilty about not enjoying this job because there are people that do. There are people that genuinely like what at that time I was working as an actuarial like consultant. And I didn't enjoy it. I didn't find that work fulfilling to me. I wasn't passionate about it. But in my head I was kind of just like, this is a good job. This is a really good job. Other people would kill for this job. Therefore I must appreciate it. But watching my colleagues actually like get enthusiastic about the work, I realized like this isn't for me. And it took me a long time to really, really make that connection because as I said, I ended up working for 4 different companies. I think every time just trying to think, okay, maybe it's a different company, maybe it's a different team that I'll find my place. But I'd say my sort of second aha moment that actually then pushed me to really move out of that career path was like you, I was also a 5 a.m. gym person and I was at gym at like early one morning and I would usually go to like the spinning class or the HIIT class or something.
The high intensity, not the gentle.
But I was just tired that morning. I was really tired and I saw the other studio was having a yoga class and I was like, oh, you know what, I'm going to try this yoga thing, just see, because I was tired. And it was actually a really great instructor. And what I really love about yoga now is that it just teaches you to go within and actually really tune in to what your body's telling you, like what you're really feeling inside. And I think looking back in my life, I think that was the first time that I really did that. I don't think ever in my life leading up to that first sort of experience with yoga had I ever tuned in, like really tuned in. I was just living life. I was just living on this go mode, you do the next thing in life. And after that day, I started to tune in, and I started to actually just become more aware of my feelings, of what my body is telling me. And from that moment, was a big eye-opener that, okay, I need to make a change. Like, this isn't working for me.
Yeah. It's so amazing for me. Like the overlap of stuff in our life, like it doesn't cease to amaze me, because like we chat a lot. So a lot of them I'm fully aware of. Now came out a new one. In terms of my moment, I also very much distinctly remember there being a moment, and the big question for me was, there's got to be more to life. Like, this can't be it. Like, the one life I get, is this it? This is how I'm going to spend it. Like, and I think it was the same thing of realizing, like, I could be happier. I could be excited about my life. I could be excited every single day, but I'm not. And I'm doing the things that society told me I'm supposed to do. So why am I not feeling happy? And I think it's a big thing to look at other people, to say, like, either you see within them the happiness or the excitement that you're like, I know I can have that. But in my case, I saw the stressed faces reflected back at me, but in like 40, 50-year-olds.
Yeah.
So I was like, I was in my 20s. I was like, I don't want that at 40 and 50. But here comes the similarity is, so I developed a trigger finger as a result of a sort of car incident I had while at work, where someone broke my window, and I went to go see a physiotherapist, because I remember the GP said, just get a surgery, it's fine, like a quick fix. And I was like, no, but let's understand, like, why is this happening? He's like, no, like, that's gonna take long, like, you can just get the surgery and fix it. And I was like, no, like, at that point I was already medicating all sorts of other ailments and things. Like, I was already just doing these like quick fixes without addressing anything. So I started seeing a physiotherapist that was very holistic, and he was very much like talking to me about the stress that I'm holding and how tense I am, and like how, there's so much. And a few sessions later, my finger came right, it could bend and it could do everything, which for me was like the light that my body was holding so much of this tension, because I was just coping, I was just doing it. But I also attended a yoga class. This wasn't my first time doing yoga, but it was my first time in like 10 years or so coming back to yoga. And I think, and I would never advocate for yoga to be like the savior of people's anything. It's not about that at all. But I think the beauty of the yoga practice is exactly what you said. It's about tuning in to your body. It's about discovering what is happening inside of you. It's listening to your body. It's not, there's a lot of other forms of exercise that's very much like push through the pain, like just do it, and focus on the results. Whereas yoga is saying, listen to your body. If your body's saying don't push, don't push. If your body's saying this is your limit, this is your limit. And it's a lot about, the breath and syncing with it. And so there's just so much value in doing that over and over. And I think when I started to connect to my body, the yoga combined with the physiotherapist, I realized that the body is keeping score, to quote obviously one of our favorite books, but my body was holding all of that tension. And it was becoming so apparent to me that I now need to rectify this tension that's built up, but also find a way to not add to it. Because what's the point? I come to a yoga class, okay, now I'm releasing a lot of this, but tomorrow I'm just going to add it by keep doing the same thing that is resulting in this in the first place. Exactly. So I think yoga was a big part of my transition out of where I was, but it's not yoga. It's connecting to your body. It's connecting to how your body is responding to the choices that we're making in terms of what we do on a daily basis.
Yeah, exactly. It's incredible what your body can tell you if you really learn to tune in. And yeah, it's also crazy that we're never taught that skill. Like, if you think back in school, surely now I think when I have a child, that's one of the skills I'm going to teach them from as young as they can learn that lesson is, what is their body telling them? Are they
Yeah.
holding tension? Are they, because we can learn so much about ourselves and make better decisions if we can just learn how to tune in to our body.
Mhm.
And yeah, I think it's such a valuable skill, and one that I'm still learning. I mean, I
So,
still
so
I still will do things that are cause me a lot of tension, and I'll learn it the hard way. Like I'll have to go to the chiro and go get a massage, and for me to realize, oh wow, I've been doing something against my sort of inner inner happiness. But it's such an
Mhm.
important skill.
Yeah, I'm not going to go into it because I think it's going to be a tangent, but there's so many societal messages that I think promote a disconnection from listening to our body, because a lot of the medications we take that don't address, the actual cause of what we're experiencing. So we're medicating away the sign from the
Yeah.
body. But aside from that, like something as small as someone telling you to finish your plate of food if you're saying you're full, to me, that's a societal message, or someone telling you to override what your body's saying to you and do this other behavior. And that's like the tiniest example that I can think of, but there are many of them, especially for women. And we can get into the hormonal chats as well, because we're told like to have a period is weakness, to not be able to do the same thing every single day, to like, I mean, how many times, because I talk about our flow and our menstrual cycles on social media so much, like people will say to me like, oh no, like I don't want to, my life doesn't revolve around my period. And but that often comes from society having told you that that's somehow like a weakness, that's somehow like frowned upon, to listen to your body saying slow down, and your body saying like now's maybe not the best time for this particular activity. And we say things like, oh no, but I don't want my health to, or whatever, to get in the way of what I'm doing. But it is you, like your
Yeah.
body, it's your vessel. It's the thing that allows us to do what we're doing. So it's not getting in the way, it's giving you signs.
Exactly. And now that, I mean, I know we both do this, we use our cycle to our advantage. Like, I know
Yeah.
that I have more creative thoughts during certain times of my cycle, and I know that I have more sort of like focused drive during different times of my cycle. And now I use that to my advantage. Whereas
Exactly.
previously, I always had to be on that like focused, get things done, constantly push that throughout my cycle, and that was actually working against my productivity in so many ways. But I had no clue at that point that was even a
Yeah.
thing. And yeah, that's also such an important lesson to learn, and that's something I'm passionate about teaching younger ladies. That's why I love if I get like younger clients and I just teach them about their cycle, and I'm like, listen to your body. Because
Yeah.
I think it's such a valuable skill to have.
Yeah. And it's such an amazing thing. So I was, we all have some wonderful stuff in our life. And one of mine is that my mom was a trained psychologist. So there's been a lot of focus throughout my life on certain behaviors that I have, or, how my concentration works, what is my orientation to various things. I've done every psychometric assessment on me under the sun, be it through my mom or through my education. So there's a great awareness of how my mind works. And often I used to have this idea that having a cycle, having a menstrual cycle, meant that it was a weakness, that it wasn't something that added value to my life. Having lived in sync with my cycle now, though, and having seen how those orientations shift, and In the Flow discusses this really well, we can create a higher level of, I'm going to say productivity just for lack of a better word right now, because I'm not saying the goal is productivity, but my output in terms of what I want to be doing is much higher now, that I do it in a way that honors the fact that I have a cycle and works in sync with my cycle as opposed to against it. And some people might say like, or look at women like that would be a weakness or something like that. But in my home, where I am married to a man who operates on his hormonal cycles, we genuinely talk about what a benefit that is. Like how much that can contribute, how I have phases that he doesn't have. Like it's an amazing thing when you see it start to play out, start to see it play out in projects that you do, projects that we take on, ways that we approach our home, and the way that we work it has phases, and beautiful phases, whereas he has pretty much the same every day. Which has its benefits. Of course, it has its benefits, and we use both of those in our home, but there's not one that's better than the other. They're just different. And I think when I was trying to operate like a man on a 24-hour cycle as opposed to honoring my cycle, that wasn't really giving me the best that I can. That wasn't whatever the best that I can really means. Like I'm not explaining it well. As someone who's monitored my concentration from when I was a child until now, like I thought that I was just like cursed. I thought, okay, like every other person with an ADD diagnosis, I'm just a little bit broken. I'm just a little bit fidgety and I have struggles with this. But through living in sync with my cycle, like I don't even identify with the diagnosis of ADD anymore. I don't identify with in any way being broken or having concentration issues or having anything that impedes being able to add value in a way that I wish to add value through the work that I do and the projects that I take.
Yeah, exactly. And I think for women who are working in the structured work environments and actually want to carry on, I think there's definitely ways that you can incorporate that, living in sync with your flow. So for example, when I started learning about that after I read In the Flow, and I still worked in corporate for quite a few years after that, I would do things like during my like very productive time, I would get a lot of work done, and then it sounds bad now, but I would literally like save that work and like not tell my manager that I'd actually done all of that, and then like over the week or two where I wasn't feeling as productive, I'd like send out an email every now and again like, oh look what I just did.
Yeah. But you found your way of living in sync with your cycle in an environment that probably has no idea that that's a thing.
Exactly. That's the thing, that the structured work environment, I don't want to, again, like we always say, you don't want to sound like you're not a victim to your circumstance, but I do think the structured work environment is very much tailored around a man's way of focusing of productivity. I think hopefully more companies are starting to become more aware of how to incorporate women's productivity differently, but I think it's a ways to go because the corporate world runs on its go timing. It's very difficult to make changes to that.
So on that note, I want to bring it back slightly because I do think I think there's a lot more women who are pushing back to taking the pill, which suppresses your cycle. So if you're taking hormonal birth control, you don't have the natural fluctuations of hormones that we're talking about here. I think that I'm seeing a rise in women pushing back against that, saying, this is not serving me, having their cycles come back, feeling the difficulties, maybe be it in the workplace, in their personal life, wherever. So I am seeing and hearing women have the same frustrations you and I did have. Okay, I only started living in sync with my cycle when I was already self-employed, so it was maybe a little bit easier. But I want to bring it then back to the time where we did leave the working environment and the fears that you have around that and the thoughts that we had around when we left. I don't know if you want to maybe just elaborate on because we spoke about why we did it, but what was going on for you, like in terms of the mindset to that and making that choice?
Yeah, so I think, like I mentioned, I had a huge fear of failure, and not just failure, but also that fear of what are people going to think, because all my university peers are actuaries and most of them are, sitting at managerial positions by now, earning a big salary. And it was a huge thing I had to get over of what are they going to think? Here's me, I'm like, I'm starting my nutrition business. So I had to do a lot of inner work around just letting go of what people think and just having more confidence in myself. And it did take a lot of personal work. I did a lot of journaling. I did a lot of that work to just have confidence in myself and know what I want and be okay with knowing what I want to do. But I think because I had tried 4 times to make the corporate world work, I knew I'm not going back to that. Like, I cannot. I mean, it's very very difficult explaining to an employer why your CV is like a mismatch of jobs. And I was like, I cannot go through that process again of interviewing and employers being like, why did you only last 1 year here and 1 year here? So I was like, I know I'm not going back to structured work, so I have to make it work. Like, there's no other way. I'm gonna make it work. And I just had to work through those fears. There wasn't any going back. And like I said, the fear of regret started to outweigh the fear of failure. And that's when I realized, like, okay, I can fail and it's fine. I can get back up again and I can try again, but I can't go back in time. So it's now or never.
Yeah, I think there's so much there, because there's a lot of fear. Like, I also had the fear of, what are people going to think? Like, what are people going to think of me? And I realized the major thing, the inner work that I had to do, and this is something I don't really have to do it anymore, but it's still there, is for a large portion of my life, people used to praise me for high achievement. Like, that was like a defining characteristic of my identity. People would literally put the focus on that. And sometimes people don't realize, when we give people labels or we praise them as like holistic things, because they wouldn't say like, oh, you did a really good job with that project. It would be like, you are a high achiever. You do all these, successful. It was like about who I am. And I internalized that message. I attached my identity to being a high achiever, because that's what people have told me. That's what has been, and they say it from a great place, because they want to kind of honor something that you've done. But I don't think that we realize that we can do as much harm with giving people good labels as we do with giving them bad labels. So I internalized this message that, this is who I am. And I had to sit with the question, if I'm not this, like, who am I? What is my worth? And obviously that is not who I am. Like, I am me. Every day I'm me. So if I'm not doing those things, I'm still me. But to sit with the discomfort that maybe I'm now going to disappoint people, because I'm not going to live up to the label they've given me, or the idea they've created of me, or the perception that they have that, Carmen's always going to do these things or always be this kind of person, when that being and doing those things was not serving me. So the inner work I had to do to overcome, like, what are people going to think, was pushing back against the identity that I'd created based off of things that I'd heard people say about me, and say, that I need to find my worth and be okay with who I am when I'm not those things. And that is tough. It's not an easy thing for us to sit with identities that we've latched onto, and just to let go.
Yeah, I think, like, I know exactly that feeling. That's exactly what I struggled with. And also something that started to play on my mind a lot, like towards like the end of my 20s, was, okay, I want to start a family soon. And I realized that I really want to be a very active parent, an active role in my children's life. And I was also starting to worry about the fact that a full-time structured job doesn't really allow that flexibility to be the type of mom that I want to be. And now I'm like, that's a good thing to think that, but I had a lot of guilt around that. I had a lot of guilt around wanting to be a mom and wanting to not work as much or as many hours because I want to be a mom. And it's just such a crazy thing, because I think a lot of women struggle with that, because we have this maternal instinct and we want to raise a family, but we've also got this era of women empowerment. Women can be CEOs, women can, and I mean, that's great. That's opened up a lot of opportunities for women. But it's crazy to think that I felt so guilty about wanting to be an active mom. Like, it's so crazy, but I think a lot of women struggle with that. And now I'm so proud of that, of myself, to know that I really want to be an active participant in my child's life. I'm not going to work as many hours when I have a young child, and I'm proud of that. But I had a lot of guilt around just feeling that way, which is, it's crazy.
Yeah. I think for me, there's so much guilt in this whole process. Like, one of the fears that I had was, how am I going to be able to afford things? Because I didn't quit my job with some massive safety net and savings and like a plan. I quit my job with this is not working for me and I need to find another way. So there was a lot of fear around financial survival. So I think there was a lot of guilt that if I were to almost become someone else's problem. So at the time it would have been, my parents' problem, or now it would be my husband's problem. To have that guilt of like, if I'm not making a certain amount of money or I'm not contributing in a certain way to our financial stability, what is my worth to our family or any of that? But for that, it was again unpacking the relationship that I had to money, because a lot of the time it's not about cannot afford. Like sometimes it is. I'm not saying there aren't people who are living in poverty, who are living on the breadline. I wasn't at the time. And there are ways to make it work. And we have obviously made it work. I mean, you and I I've been self-employed for more than 4 years now. And so it's definitely, you can make it work, but you have to address those fears. Yeah. You have to address the ideas that you have about money, and if you're in a relationship, have those discussions with your partner, because you are a dual household. So you have to talk about those things. And I think you also need to be at peace when you have those conversations, because you can't just like expect them to make up for all your fears and do your work for you. And then bringing it back to the family and wanting more in terms of that. At the time when I was formally employed, I was still on the pull for a large portion of that. And I believe, I mean, it's my journey and my beliefs. So I'm not saying this about other people, but I think the pull took away my maternal instinct. Because I remember not wanting to have kids when I was in the like, I remember distinctly saying that to people, like, oh, if I have kids, if I don't have kids, okay, whatever, like it really wasn't a priority for me. I didn't really see much value in doing it. And I'm not saying that all women should have kids or that all women want to have kids or any of that. Just saying, tip for me, when I went off the pill, like, there was a major shift. There was a major excitement that grew in me about being a parent, about experiencing pregnancy and breastfeeding and birth and that whole journey, and also the type of parent. I didn't want to be the type of parent who only takes 4 months maternity leave and then I go back to work and my child goes to a daycare for whatever, 8 hours a day or more, or we get a nanny for that period of time. And again, not a judgment on other people who choose that. I realized that was not what I wanted. And I didn't really also want to have to pick between the two, which I think is so common. There's this guilt of like, either I need to be a full-time mom or I need to be this career woman. And I don't think we have to pick between the two. I think that we can have ways of working, earning an income or whatever work means to you. Like if it's not an income, if it's some kind of bartering system or just what you put out there because you love doing that, and still be the type of parent you want to be. But I think the formal employment and the mindset that I previously had, those two would not have gone together. Like that would not have worked at all. But the changes we've made now has allowed for me to feel that when I become a parent, I will have a lot to figure out, but I'll be able to be the mom that I want to be, I hope, and also do the work that I love to do in a way that is sustainable. And I realized that a lot of women carry guilt about that, because we were now told, you have the opportunities to work and the opportunities to succeed, so we somehow have to make use of that. We have these, like, what if my degree just lies on a shelf getting dusty? Like the guilt around, like, am I using it enough? Am I taking advantage of the opportunities that other generations sacrificed for me to have as a woman?
Yeah, I think we have had an interesting few generations before us, because I think for most of us, many of us, our grandmoms were stay-at-home moms, like took care of the household. And then our moms were very much career orientated, because in that generation of our moms, it was that, that real progression of women are seen as equal in the workplace. Women can also be CEOs. And I think, obviously that was a really positive movement, because it created a lot of opportunity for women. But I think, as you said that so well, this next generation, we feel like, our moms worked hard for these opportunities for women. We have to now live that. And we also have to make it in the corporate world. And we are equal to men. men, and we have to show them, we have to live that legacy. And now I feel like we're this confused generation, because we're like, but what if we want, can we skip a generation? I want my grandmom's life.
Yeah, I love that phrasing, the confused generation.
I think a lot of women that I've spoken to are in this exact position of thinking, do we have to do it all? Do we have to be the mom and be the career woman and be the homemaker? And like, how are we supposed to do all of that?
And I think a big thing that I believe in is that women can be and do whatever you want to do. You want to be a career woman, you do that. You want to be a career woman and a mom and a wife and a whatever, like, you do that, do whatever you want with your life. But we do have to realize we have 24 hours in a day. We have certain resources that we can allocate to certain things. How you allocate them, completely up to you. And I think the conversation that I have with myself and that we have, it's not about saying women can't do that stuff. Do literally whatever your heart desires, you do that. But it is saying, question though, why are we doing those things? Question, because a lot of what I was doing was not because I thought that somehow brought me fulfillment. I was doing it because that's what other people told me I was supposed to do. That for me is not the same as doing it because it brings you joy in your life or it brings you fulfillment in your life. And you want to be, and I mean, I see on social media, there's so many posts about women who carry guilt if they choose to go back to work, and women who carry guilt who choose to stay at home. So I'm like, is everybody just feeling guilty? Like, are all women just like, this can't be it. Come on, like, why are we feeling this amount of guilt about the choices that we make? Like, can we not be excited about honoring those choices? We live in a world now where we can get creative about things. It doesn't have to be all or nothing. But also, if you choose one or the other, that's a choice. That's a choice you're making for your life. So, we got to find a way to not carry the burden of guilt with us when we make this beautiful choice for your life, whatever that choice might be. And I think where I am in my life is the choice is I wanted to be very intentional about preconception. I wanted to be very intentional about pregnancy. And I do understand, like, doesn't look like it because I moved to a new country halfway through a pregnancy, but I was still intentional with the way that I worked in honoring my body and not, taking on too much. And the same way that I will prepare for when the parenting journey starts is to get creative about that. So I don't carry guilt or I don't feel like I can't do the things that excite me. And when I make the choice of whatever I'm going to do, I'm going to do it without carrying a burden.
Yeah, I think that's such a good point, is just we need to be more confident in owning those decisions that we make, and also knowing, like, you're also going to make, maybe not only say wrong decisions, but like you'll take different paths in life, and it might be the decision for the time, and then you might change your decision. But I think where I used to think was this like long-term vision of my life, I'm going to climb the corporate ladder and buy a big house and this and this, and now I'm just so much more open to veering in the direction that my life needs to at that time, and just being comfortable with knowing that this is the decision right now that is best for me, and that's what I'm going to take. And I might make a different decision in a year or 2 years, and that's fine. And I think, I don't know if that's also maybe a more feminine trait, maybe I know a lot of the men I know are in a career for much longer time, or in the same company for much longer time. But yeah, maybe we are designed to think more like that, and it's just, it's nice to be able to honor that.
Yeah, one of the things that I also think of that we can offer to people, because I can sometimes be a bit, like, I think, harsh about saying, let's unpack the stuff, own our choices, don't be a victim to life. Like, I understand I can be a bit intense about that. So I think how we can help other women through this is to let go of the judgments of the choices that other women make regarding what serves them best, and allow for you to change your mind. Allow for you to say, no, you know what, I'm only going to take this many months maternity leave, then I'm going to go back to work. And if you want to change your mind, change your mind. Change your mind and have women in your life who support you. There are so many periodic intervals in the way that I've chosen to do things where I've had to sit and reflect and say, this is not sustainable. I thought that it would be, I went down this path, but it's not serving me in the way that I thought. I'm going to reevaluate, reassess, change my plan.
Yeah.
And to respect that we have a space to do that, and to get excited when people do that, because to get excited if someone says they're starting a new venture. Because the biggest thing when I started my business, and this is going to happen to a lot of people, if you choose to live in sync with your cycle, you choose to go off the pill, you choose to do whatever, the first thing that pops into everybody's head is what can go wrong. I gotta tell Carmen all the, maybe she didn't think about all of these things that could possibly go wrong with the choice that she's made. And people do that from a space of kindness, but it's so not helpful. It's so not helpful for me to hear all of your fears around the choices that I've made, all of your kind of like, what about this? Like, have you thought about that? And so many people ask me about that. Like, what's your strategic plan? Like, what are your finances? Like, literal people ask me, like, what's your turnover? What's this? And that's okay, like, that's fine. But we also just need to honor that the person's figuring it out. So the I don't know, and I'm going to see, and I'm going to work at this, and I'm going to like figure it out is a perfectly good answer to all of the fears that other people bring our ways about the decisions that we make around what we think is going to work best for us, and then have us find our way and not stick to the same strategic plan for the next 5 years if I feel like it's not working for me.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, it is scary. I think, we're here saying, go for what you want, quit that corporate job and do your own thing. And it is scary and it is tough. I mean, I've had loads of like really tough days, but for me, it's been so worth it. Like the toughness is completely different to the toughness I experienced working in corporate. That was like almost like this is like pit of just like a hole that I just couldn't crawl out of. Whereas now when it's tough, I'm like, okay, this is tough, but how am I going to make it work? I'm excited to overcome that challenge. I'm excited to figure it out and to move forward. And I think that's a good sort of maybe a message for women if they are watching this and they're in that position, to know that it's even though it's not easy and even though it's scary, it's so worth it if it's going to be meaningful for you.
Yeah, because the tough now is the tough that's building the life I want. It's not a tough for someone else's, whatever. And I think that ties back into something that's been a big part of my journey, which is really having a look at the limiting beliefs that I hold about myself or the way the world works or the way things should be, and sitting with them. And then how I make the choices that I'm saying, I honor my choices, is to sit with, where are these thoughts coming from? Like someone will say, oh, if I don't have a job, I won't be able to afford food. That's a belief worth sitting with. I mean, there's so many good books about this. Like I think the most popular one is Who Moved My Cheese and Out of the Maze, is to really challenge the beliefs that are holding us back. And some beliefs serve us, and some beliefs served us at some point in our life. But to question, do they serve me now? Like, does it serve me to have a particular idea about what I should or should not be doing, or what a woman should or should not be doing, or the way that I should or should not be parenting or approaching parenthood or whatever? To sit with those beliefs we hold and say, like, where do they come from? Do I want this belief in my life? Is it serving me? And then to make that informed decision from a space of not just feeling like we're a victim to our life, because a lot of our limiting beliefs hold us as a victim. It's like, I have to do this. And I think the biggest value that nonviolent communication taught me, I probably can't say that because it taught me so many other things, was saying there's no I have to. The choice is a choice you make, and maybe the reason is a really big reason. So I make this decision because this is how I provide and feed for my family. But then it's still a choice. It's still, I'm choosing this so I can provide for my family. It's not I have to do this. You don't have to do anything. These are the choices we're making from an empowered space to take ownership of the lives that we live. And when I was formerly employed, there was no ownership in my choices. There was, I have to wake up tomorrow. I have to get this project done by this time. And the tough days were very much feeling sorry for myself. I was very much a victim to my life. And being self-employed, I don't get to be a victim. Because I pick my clients. I pick the work that I do, the way that I do it. So there's no one to blame. If I'm having a tough day, that's on me.
Yeah, and I think something that I battled with a lot when I first started, and I kept thinking, oh, if I was just in a job, I would get my monthly paycheck, and I had health insurance, and it was just so much easier. And then I would just weigh up things like, for example, health. You spoke a lot
Mm.
about all the niggles and health issues you had working, and I was like, that paycheck that I got, I was going to chiro, I was going to physio, I was going for massages because I just had so much tension, and I was like, I don't need to do any of that now because I've just like let go of all that tension. So that's like so much money that I'm not having to waste on that. And yeah, just like you said, to actually be like, I've made this choice for my health for many reasons, and wanting that monthly paycheck, it's just, you just realize like it's not that I don't need to be victim to needing that monthly paycheck.
Yeah. So so maybe one of the things we have discussed it already, but maybe we can explicitly address it, or you can try answer this question, and it's going to be a tough one. But do you think that somebody can truly be healthy and honor their health in the kind of working environments that you and I had?
I think so. To give credit to some of the companies I've worked for, I think that big companies are starting to put a lot of emphasis on employee wellness, and I did feel that the company did try honor that. So they had like a lot of emphasis on employee wellness, on mental health, on physical health. They would have like workshops on this kind of thing. So I think if you're strict about putting boundaries in place, if you say 5 o'clock, I'm out of here because I go take care of my health, I exercise, or whatever you do. I think if you're very strict about your boundaries, maybe you can make it work. Make sure you're getting up regularly throughout the day and things like that. I think for me, even with that, I still really struggled just because of the tension I was holding. And like I said, I spent most of my 20s with this tug of war between myself. And I think that internal tug of war is probably one of the worst things for your health. Geber Mattei writes about this in his new book, which I think we really want to discuss, but called The Myth of Normal. And he writes about that specifically, about how that internal tug of war is doing so much damage to your health. And so I really struggled with my health working for corporate companies, even though they put an emphasis on employee wellness. And yeah, since I've been working for myself, it's just allowed me the time and the flexibility and the space to prioritize my health a lot more. And because I'm doing something I genuinely enjoy, I don't hold all that tension. I don't have that tug of war, that internal tug of war. So it's it's a tricky one to answer. I think it's person dependent, but I certainly think it's harder to be healthy in a structured work environment.
I think in my case, I did, take time off to explicitly focus on that, because up until that point, I had not taken any time off. Working as a consultant, I don't like, do you really ever take time off? Like, even when you take time off, someone's looking for you, someone wants an email from you, like your mind is never really free. And I realized that's the profession that I chose. So I'm not being a victim to being a consultant, and I still fulfill the role of a consultant, just not in formal employment anymore. There was a lot I could do in terms of my health while being formally employed. There were many, many steps I took while being formally employed that made a massive, massive difference to my health. But in my case, I didn't work for a company that had a particular emphasis on well-being or any of that. I realize now, though, that was 4 years ago, so there's no judgment on them. I do think industry-wide and in general, companies are starting to see that they need to, you need your employees in physically good conditions to be able to do what you want them to do. So there's value in investing and making sure that they're okay. But in my case, there were a couple of things, and particularly the tension that you speak of, like that physical tension in my body, that I don't know if I would have been able to properly let go of that and not continuously get more and more and more in the environment that I was working in the way that I was working. So yeah, I could get my adequate food in. I could make sure that I meal prepped and, got all that stuff done and kind of forced time off. But there are a few things in my health journey that I just did after I was no longer formally employed that I'm not sure I could have done while being employed. I'm trying to think of them now, but in particular, like one of them was my company had a dress code that included wearing high heels, and I had a lot of issues with my knees. And since I wear barefoot shoes, I've worn Vivo barefoot shoes and, toe spread and all that. I don't have issues with my knees. I'm currently pregnant with a lot of weight on my knees and I don't have issues. Where I had major issues in my mid-20s with my knees. And like a small thing like that is, I don't know if the company would have allowed it. I didn't have that conversation with them. But working for myself, I get to very freely pick what shoe wear I put on. And that has contributed to not having one of the physical ailments I had. I had other chronic things that I was told, this is chronic, you have to mitigate this, some kind of like skin allergy thing. I have not had that skin allergy thing that was so-called chronic in like 3.5 years, if not longer. And I was told like, sorry, bad luck, you have this skin allergy thing.
Same. That actually reminds me, my body was covered in eczema, and now it's gone. Like I don't get eczema anymore, and I was always like trying to supplement it away and use cortisone cream and all these things. And looking back, I'm like, it's just stress. That's all it was.
A lot of stress, yeah. And one of the things, I was also an insomniac for literally most of my life. Like, my parents tell me even as a baby, I would just like lie there and stare at the ceiling. And that was a real difficulty for me through primary school, high school, university, and working, because the world says you work 8 to 5. Those are the hours you operate. So if I didn't fall asleep in time, I still had to get up. I still had to go to school. I still had to be at class. I still had to be at work. When I started working for myself and I took away the pressure to have to wake up early, I could build a routine around going to sleep at night that felt a lot more relaxing. And yes, it took long. Insomnia was not one of the things that I was able to overcome overnight. That's funny. But it took a long time and it took a lot of effort. But I mean, now for the last month and a half living here, I've been able to wake up at 4 a.m, 5 a.m, and not feel like I'm not able to go to sleep at night. So I again have that timing in the morning that I had with schooling and formal employment that I've now put on myself, but I'm not re-experiencing the insomnia that I had for most of my life. So I don't think anything we're saying in this video is saying that you can't do those things. I think sometimes we just need to leave an environment to heal, to find a different way, and then you can maybe incorporate it back in if you so choose to do that, if that's what you want to do. But sometimes I really did have to step out. It wasn't something I could do in that environment, or maybe I could have, but it would have just taken really long. Who knows?
Yeah, and I don't know about you, but when I first started like full time in working for myself, I was so tied to the idea of like the structure of a company that I would structure my day still. Like I opened up my client bookings from 8 a.m. Because I was like, it's work hours. Like work hours are 8 to 5. Yeah. And then also like I just realized I needed time to recover. I was so tired, and the mornings for me, I just realized I need my mornings. I need my mornings to have a slow start to the day, to just get into it how I need to get into it. And I pushed out, like I only started taking clients from 10 a.m. And yeah, it almost like I was like guilty, like, oh, I'm only starting work at 10 o'clock. And like, it took a while to just get into the fact that I can have flexibility. And like now, what are work hours? I mean, I have times where I'm open to seeing clients, but like sometimes I work at night, like if I've got energy to and I'm enjoying what I'm doing, and I can do some work at night. Sometimes I start early, sometimes I don't start early. And some people thrive on structure, and that's fine. But I'm loving the fact that I can just honor my needs, and I can put my work can fit flexibly around my needs, instead of me sacrificing my needs for my work the whole time.
Yeah, that's so funny, because one of the things my mom and I spoke about when Ian and I moved in together and got married and all that, is we laughed and spoke about how he might have a hard time living with me because I have little to no routine. Not one that any other human being can place as a normal routine. There are some things that I do that are potentially routine based, but for the most part, I thrive in a flexible environment. I have other types of structures that allow me to maybe do certain things. It's not that my whole world is unstructured, but it is very much flexible with some structures, but it completely lacks your typical routine. And when I first started working for myself, I've always known that I don't really thrive in routine. So that wasn't like a new revelation for me. But I still felt the need to put up almost like to convince other people that I was working in a formal way. I was doing what a professional person does do. And I work these hours, and I'm like, why am I trying to convince other people? Like, who cares if they think that I work 8 to 5 and I remember someone saying to me, what, Carmen, like, I think it's a good idea if you wake up every morning, shower as if you're going to a workplace. And I was like, no, that sounds like a good idea for you. Yeah. I'm very productive in my pajamas, and then I will get dressed and shower and all of that when I'm good and ready to do so. Again, it's just about letting go of the ideas of what is productivity. Productivity is whatever it is for you. Like, it's not what works for somebody else. And the working world doesn't have productivity down. They just do it in accordance with whatever their industry is or whatever suits them. And we latch onto that as if like that's somehow, the ultimate way of working. So I think one of the things that I wanted to maybe discuss as a last discussion point, unless you had something else, was the reassurance that this choice that we've made now by no means doesn't mean we're successful. We are not successful. That's not what happened here. And I think predominantly my definition of success changed, and maybe you can elaborate on that. And the way that I work changed, but I still do the same job that I did as a formally employed person. Like, I'm not suddenly doing a completely different thing. And if someone chooses to do a different thing, that's awesome as well. You are doing a little bit of a different thing. So I think maybe you can jump into talking about that, is that we're not sacrificing success.
Yeah, I think, because I started this talk with saying, I was very driven by external definitions of success for a lot of my life. So at school, that being getting good marks and getting into a good program, getting a good job, earning a lot of money, and as I started to get more in tune with myself, I think my ideas of what is success just started to shift to more, am I living a life that's authentic to me? Am I doing something that I find meaning in? Do I feel like I'm giving meaning back to the world? Can I take time off, or can I honor my health and be the healthiest version of myself? Can I be a good friend, a good partner? Can I show up in the world the way I want to? So those kind of definitions of success just started becoming more and more prevalent to me. And now I'd say in terms of career success, I don't think that I'm like you said, I'm not successful. I'm actually like very happy with where I am in my career now. I'm serving clients that actually derive meaning from the work we do together, that makes a positive difference in their life. And I think your definition of success changes, and you don't have to give up success just because you've left the corporate world or a structured work environment. You can still be successful in your career, in your life, without having that formal definition or formal progression that you would have in a structured work environment.
One of the things that typically does happen, like, you and I are not unique to this journey that we've taken. I think that's why we're talking about, because we realize there are so many other women who have done this and made this choice. One of the things that I do often see is that the person might leave formal work and then it will look completely differently. Whatever they do next looks very different. And sometimes that can scare people. Sometimes that excites people. Like, that might be the driving force. Like, that's what you want to do. You want to just like quit your job, live in the mountains, do your creative projects, like sell it at the market on the weekend. And that's like your vibe. Amazing. Go for it. I think one of the reassurances that I want to give is it's also not, the journey doesn't have to look like that. So my journey doesn't look like that. I provide a professional service to companies, to big companies, to fancy companies, to put it that way. My business is formally registered. I have an accountant. I do financial statements. Like I do all of those things because I want to, not because I think that's what needs to happen. Like that felt efficient to me to run my business in that way. So I think I just want to say out loud, like it doesn't, again, we can let go of what we think it's supposed to look like and build whatever is meaningful for you, rather than thinking like, okay, if I leave the corporate world, I now have to be a hippie in the bush. You can be. You really can be. And yes, I wear probably half as much, no, like 10% as much makeup as I used to wear. Yes, I wear my bamboo clothing, and there's a lot of things that is very all natural about the way that I work now, but it isn't like you don't have to be these two. There's definitely wherever you fall, you can just build that life over there. And I think what success is, so I know I'm a little bit late to this party, but I'm currently reading Eckhart Tolle's New Earth. And yesterday I was listening to the part about where it talks about when we identify with certain roles. And I think that we typically do that, where we just like latch onto this role, latch onto the role of like, what does it mean to be a business owner? What does it mean to be self-employed? Like, what does it mean to be a partner, a wife, a mother, a whatever? And then we attach definitions of success to that. But I mean, success is whatever it is for you. Like, there's not a checklist to say, okay, these 5 things now mean you're successful as a parent, or whatever the role is that we're identifying with. And the beauty of this journey is, as you're saying, is what does success mean to me now? It means living a life that is meaningful for me, because I get this one time, like I want to live what's meaningful for me, not what's meaningful for you or for somebody else or what somebody else thinks is a good life. I want to live my good life and my life that's authentic to me. And the metric by which I measure my success is exactly what you said. Am I showing up the way I want to? That's what's the defining factor. The things that I want to achieve, the partner that I want to be, am I showing up that way, as opposed to some other person's definition of how I'm supposed to do certain things? And that's been the driving force of my behaviors now, is to measure to what degree am I showing up authentically, loving my life, excited about my life. And loving my life doesn't mean I'm happy and not ever like feeling any other emotion. I do, but on average, I just have a full life that is very authentic to the choices that I make.
Yeah, and just one more point, like, and there's nothing wrong with wanting to make a lot of money. Like, money is great. It allows you to do the things that you want to do and buy a lot of things you want to buy, and you don't have to think that if you do your own thing that I'm
very poor.
I'm following my passion, so I'm gonna earn like nothing, but it's fine because I'm like, you can follow your passion. Yeah, you can follow your passion and you can make money. It's not like you can't be financially successful in your own doing your own thing either.
For sure. And that's another limiting belief that we have. We have a belief that if we do only the things that bring us joy and excitement, then maybe I'm going to be poor, or like nobody's going to want this service. Or I'm so fortunate that you and other women in my life have paved the way of doing what excites their souls, and they make money doing that. Like, they are living out the things that genuinely excite them every single day in a way that honors them and serves them. And yeah, you have to sit with your beliefs about money and your relationship to money and your stresses about money and unpack those things. We don't have to typically beneficial. But I mean, like, none of them moved back in with their parents and can't support themselves. Like, for me, my relationship to money is make as much money as I want to fund the lifestyle I have. I really like organic food and free range food that's sustainably sourced. It comes at a bit of a higher price tag than not that food, and I want to be able to afford that. So money is a means to me being able to fund the life that I have, and that's my relationship to it. So again, it's a limiting belief, I think, to think that if I follow my passion, I'm going to be poor. Yeah. You might be, but Like it's not necessarily the case. You might be at sometimes. It might do a whole lot of this. And that's part of the journey, is to kind of sit with the discomfort that there isn't that fixed paycheck coming at every end of the month.
Yeah, and it is okay to also not want to make money, because I think, I always say, I think being stay-at-home mom is very admirable, and if that's what you want to do as well, and you can do that with your partner, then that's also fine. You don't have to feel guilty about that.
Contribute to your household isn't the monetary one, then great. Like that's a decision that only you and your partner can make. Like nobody else actually has an input on that decision, really, unless obviously someone wants your opinion on it. But I mean, typically that's between the two of you, how you're going to run your household and how you're going to afford food and to live in whatever you live in and so forth. So I think there's just so much beauty in deciding what kind of life you want to build and working towards doing that.
Yeah, I think that's a good summary of the conversation. Decide the life you want and go after it. It's like don't think that you're not worthy of that life.
So I think if you're happy, let's end the discussion now. I know you and I can literally continue to talk about this topic and other topics for hours long. Good for us to cut it here?
Yeah, I think that's good.
Okay, great. So I just want to thank everybody who joined us for today's wellness discussion. Hope you found value in it. Hope it was interesting for you. Let us know in the comments down below. Remember that we will be doing this regularly, so let us know what topics you want us to chat about. Like Jacqui mentioned, I think we might start talking about some of the books that we discuss like in these videos, because we read a lot of the books and find value in them, and maybe we can just share what value we find. So that will probably be coming up soon. And yeah, if you found that other people might find value in this video, please remember to share it with them. We appreciate that. And that's about it. Thanks so much, Jacqui. I had fun having this conversation with you.
Thanks, Carmen. Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Bye.